Right, so big questions, of course, in the air, even as that summit is underway on Sentosa Island, which incidentally, Sentosa itself means peace and harmony, which is an interesting choice of venue, a strategic one, I'm sure. In the studio with me right now to talk more about that summit is WION's ambassador. It feels like that. You've been with us since this morning. Ambassador Arun Singh, India's former ambassador to the United States, with us in the studio. Ambassador Singh, thank you for making time once again. Just following that meeting, the one-on-one meeting, very quickly Trump apparently said that he's forged a quote-unquote good relationship with Kim Jong-un. Too soon to say that, maybe?
Well, some time back he had said that within the first minute he will know how the summit is going. And within the first minute he had said that the summit is going to be tremendously successful. So it's clear how he wants to project it. And we'll have a good relationship is something that he has not said for the first time.
Right.
He has said that also in the context of the Chinese president. So this is just President Trump's way. But clearly he's invested in having a successful summit. Politically, for him, he's wanted to project that he can do things differently from any other US president. And since no US president has ever met a North Korean leader, for President Trump as a sitting president to meet a North Korean leader, come out or project a successful outcome, will meet his political objective.
Right.
And therefore, clearly, he's going to go down that path. So today, we'll have a successful summit or projection of a successful summit. But how it will play out will be told only in the coming months and years. They will probably come out with some document talking about a process, talking about some kind of denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and a process for monitoring that. But how that process goes forward is what will need to be watched. Because in 1994, the US and North Korea had reached an agreement on the nuclear issue.
Yes.
But within a few years that unraveled.
Right.
Because even there North Korea was committed to full scope safeguards and not walking out of the NPT. But after a while it said that the US was not observing its part of the agreement. US said that North Korea was not observing its part of the agreement. And beyond that, North Korea would want to know as to how committed is the US to an agreement it signs.
Right.
Because President Trump has walked back from many agreements that other US presidents have signed. And what happens if there's a change of administration in the US? So I think there are a lot of questions about how the process evolves. And again, in the past, we have seen that historical agreements, like the 1993 agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians, for which the Nobel Peace Prizes were given, unraveled after some years.
Right.
So I think what is important is not just a successful outcome today, but the process that follows.
Absolutely. And as you were mentioning, I mean, President Trump, one can gauge from the way he's been engaging with the media ahead of this summit that this is really about him. He is personally invested in this meeting. Ramesh Ramachandran, WION's associate editor, also joining us from Sentosa Island. Ramesh, good morning once again. It seems, though, that it isn't just President Trump who is personally invested in this meeting. So is Kim Jong-un. He, too, is playing to a domestic audience. He is, opened himself up to the media and the world in a big way since January of this year. He was seen, enjoying the sights and sounds of Singapore yesterday. So this is, at the end of the day, really a lot to do with the two men at the center of this, and of course the third man, that is Moon Jae-in.
Absolutely, it is past 11:45 local time here in Singapore, which means it's 15 past 9 in the morning in India. And so talks have gone on for nearly 3 hours now. There's no official word yet on the likely outcome of the summit meeting, the first ever between a sitting American president and a North Korean leader. But as you correctly mentioned, Aisha, the stakes are pretty high. It is big, it is huge. This is not something that's been tried ever before in either country's history. So both countries, North Korea and the US, expect some positive outcome, some takeaway from the summit meeting so that both sides can walk away happy and content in the fact that this is not a one-off opportunity and that this is part of a process. I'm quoting Trump here when he said this is a process, first of many steps, a series of steps which both sides can be expected to take in the days and months ahead. But that said, talking about Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump in particular, Aisha, Donald Trump would see this as an opportunity to put his skeptics at bay, to tell his critics back home that he can strike a deal, and a good deal at that, with North Korea, number one. Number two, from Kim Jong-un's perspective, Kim Jong-un seeks legitimacy. He wants to be seen as a legitimate ruler of a legitimate country. He's craving for world attention, recognition. He may or may not get it, but he's asking for it, and he might well end up getting it in the days to come. But as things stand now, the talks are very delicately poised. Mike Pompeo himself said yesterday here in Singapore that America continues to insist on verifiable, complete and irreversible denuclearization, and that is something which is an anathema for the North Korean regime. They say nuclear weapons are a means of defense, deterrence for us, and we will not part with it just yet anytime soon. It'll be incremental in a phased manner. So America says everything has to be done immediately. Kim Jong-un says we'll do it eventually. So that's the difference, and that difference continues to this moment. We'll have to wait and watch as to what transpires in the Capella Hotel behind me here on Sentosa Island for a fair idea of the outcome from their deliberations here.
Indeed. And you don't even have to look too far back, Ambassador Singh, for understanding why the North Koreans might be nervous about the United States. I mean, forget what's happened in the past. President Trump backed out of a communique hours after boarding the flight out of Quebec, Canada, on his way to Singapore. So one can understand where the North Koreans are coming from for having a certain degree of skepticism about how do I put this, how serious the US is about holding up its end of the bargain.
Because one of the things North Korea would want coming out of this process is some kind of a reassurance for the regime and its continuity, and that there would be no threat or challenge to that. And second, economic assistance, normalization of trade and economic relations. And they would want to make sure that that process is not disrupted. That's why a process is important. Step by step, each will work its way through. But beyond that, I think another aspect is the impact on the Indo-Pacific. Because whatever is worked out between US and North Korea would have an impact not just on North Korea, but also on South Korea, on Japan, China, the China-North Korea relationship, and the broader Indo-Pacific.
Right. Allow me to come in, Ambassador. We're getting live shots from the Capella Hotel of that working lunch. Let's turn up the volume and see if we can listen into some of... All right, okay. Well, it looks like they had other plans in mind. I suppose nobody likes being filmed while they're eating. It holds true for these two men as well. But so part two of, or part three, I should say, of today's proceedings underway, Ambassador. Please continue. I apologize for cutting you off.
The US has for some time been trying to define what its posture will be in what it describes as the Indo-Pacific, especially with the rise of China, the economic and military rise of China, China's growing presence in South Pacific, its militarization of the islands, is developing facilities for area denial for the US. President Obama had spoken of pivot to Asia, then rebalancing, and none of that really worked out. So whatever the US works out with North Korea, what does it mean in terms of US posture? Presence of US forces, both the Army, the Navy, will have an impact on the region, on the perception of its allies, South Korea, Japan. So there's a broader impact on the Indo-Pacific, which will have a bearing and implication for everyone, including India.
Yes. And
for us, the other area of interest is related to proliferation. Because North Korea has had a clandestine proliferation linkage with Pakistan.
Yes.
Getting nuclear weapons technology from Pakistan and proliferating missile technology to Pakistan. Another area of proliferation was in Syria. In 2007, Israel had bombed a facility in Syria, which it said was a nuclear facility being developed in collaboration with North Korea.
Right.
So people would be wanting to get more information related to those aspects. And again, other countries in the region would be watching this very closely, because South Korea is clearly very invested in this process.
It is.
Any kind of destabilization or any kind of a conflict would have an immediate impact on South Korea. Japan is watching it very closely, because they would not want an agreement whereby the US sort of protects itself, limits North Korea's missile capabilities, but not sufficient to prevent it from reaching Japan. So they would have some impact. And then China would want to make sure that its interests on the Korean Peninsula are protected.
It's always the elephant in the room, China.
So, yes. So I think there are many stakes, many players. It's going to be a very complex, long-drawn process. Despite whatever is projected today as an immediately successful outcome.
And I think that is something that everyone, that's an understanding that most people are cognizant of as they're watching these visuals from Singapore. Before we close out the bulletin though, I believe Ramesh has a comment that he'd like to come in with. Ramesh, go ahead.
Yeah, just a small point, actually. We're talking about food and the working lunch now. We saw Kim Jong-un bring with him cold noodles from Pyongyang for his inter-Korean summit meeting with Moon Jae-in. I'm not sure if he's done that here again. Also, another point that 2 days from now, Donald Trump will celebrate his 72nd birthday, and I'm not sure whether he would have a small birthday celebration inside with the cutting of a cake. Now, remember yesterday when Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong met Donald Trump, they had a small celebration with a birthday cake. So I'm not sure if the two leaders inside now, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, will do something similar.
Right, one is 27, the other one is turning 72. There's symmetry in that as well. Ramesh, we'll have to wait and see if there are visuals of a cake when those pictures come out at a later stage. But for now, we're wrapping up this newscast. Thanks, Ramesh Ramachandran and Ambassador Singh, for joining us this morning. Our coverage on the historic summit between these two men will continue, of course. But